What's up, passengers? I'm Steven from the Hills Maniacs, and today I'm going to be giving my thoughts on the series finale of Manifest. Now, if you don't know what Manifest is, essentially it was a series about a group of people who board a plane. They're just going on a normal trip or whatever, or they're all getting back from a trip from to wherever, and they board the plane, and along the flight back home, they experience some turbulence, which is something that happens normally on flights. It's kind of just a wind thing and all that stuff. But when they get back and the plane lands, they find out they've been missing for 5.5 years, meaning that at some point during that flight, they somehow flew forward in time 5.5 years, which meant that their families all assumed they were dead and sort of moved on with their own lives. Some of them are married to different people or whatever. And that was kind of what the intrigue of the show was. It was all these people trying to figure out what exactly happened to them and why they keep experiencing these visions that they're all having at different times and stuff like that, which they come to know as callings, which basically those visions tell them what to do and or give them a sort of glimpse into the future, and they have to decide whether or not it's worth pursuing that calling, actually doing what the calling wants them to do once they figure it out, etc. And it was kind of a test thing. And that was kind of a unique premise that they did throughout the whole series. And the whole show was based around them trying to figure out what happened to them, why they are doing, or why they're getting these visions, and what exactly their purpose is and why this happened to them and not other flights, etc. And as the show progressed on, there was only 4 seasons. The final season, season 4, was just recently released on Netflix. You can watch all 20 episodes of it now on Netflix. It originated on NBC. But as the show progressed on in the later seasons and stuff, you started to realize that it was kind of loosely based on like Christian religion and things like that, with like, the divine consciousness and all that kind of stuff, where they were kind of sent they were all chosen by God, essentially, is what it was going for, to deliver a message about the end of the world to the rest of the world and sort of like help or guide them through their lives or whatever, try and get them to make a change in their lives, everyone else that wasn't on the flight. And I thought that was a really intriguing concept for a TV series. Like, you kind of see these hints at that as the show progresses on. And because of that, every episode felt important. There wasn't any wasted episodes because something happened to at least one character in every episode, so you kind of couldn't really miss it because it connected to the overall theme. And I liked that it continued to build up into what I assumed would be this huge, like, climactic finale and stuff, where it was like a really satisfying ending for all the characters and for what they were meant to do and what the show was trying to portray. But I feel like, honestly, we didn't get that, because the ending that we got, while it was satisfying in terms of like the characters got a happy ending, it kind of took away from what the show was meant to be from the start. Because what it seemed to be building to was that the passengers of that flight, the ones who were brought back 5.5 years or whatever, if they were sent by God or whatever to sort of save the world from this destruction that was coming, which in this case was a volcano erupting from the center of the earth that would have destroyed the whole earth and everyone in it. So they were kind of sent as sort of a guiding light, or like angels to guide everyone so that they will be safe when that apocalypse occurs. But instead what we got was an ending where all of the main cast of characters, all of the passengers from the plane, got to basically reset those 5.5 years that they didn't get to experience because of all of this that transpired. So they kind of got to see that they kind of were sent back in time again to live out those 5.5 years that they were missing. And they still remember what happens, like what originally happened on the plane. Like, all of those passengers remember that, but nobody else does. So to them, to these normal people, it seems like they're crazy for mentioning all this stuff about like the plane going forward in time and these callings and all that kind of stuff. And it didn't seem to really feel right, in my opinion, because if the show was trying to show us that these people were meant to save the world from this destruction, I would have rather seen the aftermath of that rather than a complete reset on everything we'd seen before, because that's essentially what we got. It had this huge build up in that final episode and stuff, like, will they make it on the plane which resurfaced and stuff like that? Will they survive the apocalypse and all that kind of stuff? We see them fly away in the plane while the Earth is being destroyed, and we assume that everyone there is about to be destroyed by the volcano, but they say the apocalypse ended, like there was no more volcano and all that stuff, which we also got to see, so they did save the world. I would have liked to have seen that world sort of continue, where those characters that interacted with these people from the plane, can live on their lives knowing that the world was saved and it was literally about to end. But we didn't get that because they wanted to give a satisfying conclusion for all the main characters instead of focusing on the world that they've built through these 4 seasons with all the interesting things that happened around this whole situation. I think that would have been a more intriguing end to the story. Like, we get to see what the world looks like now that they know that they were about to die and these passengers saved them. And I think it would have been even more satisfying maybe if to see those characters sort of fly off into the sunset like they were meant to have died on that plane in the first place, but they were sent back to save the world first and then end up dying anyways or something like that. I thought that's what it was building to, but we didn't get that. And I kind of felt like it was underwhelming just a little bit. It almost didn't make sense because why did these characters from the plane get the second chance to live their life? And I get what they were going for. It was sort of like to teach all of them a lesson on how to be a good person, because they all ended up helping each other through all of everything that happened throughout the series and stuff like that. And they learned something about themselves, and then they all grew as people when they came out on the other side back in the normal timeline that would have occurred had the plane not skipped ahead 5.5 years. I get that's what they were going for. Maybe you could also even look at it as well, now they're in heaven. This is sort of their heaven. They get to live eternally, reliving their lives that they lost or something like that. But I didn't see it that way. I saw it as almost an abandonment of what they were trying to do in the first place, because they essentially erased everything that we've seen over these last 3 and 4 seasons, everything that made the show so intriguing. And I felt like it was almost like a cop-out the way that they ended this show, because they did all this work building up these characters and introducing us to this world where they were gone for 5.5 years. There's these special people get it with these unique powers, and they're getting these visions and learning what to do with these visions and helping other people and stuff like that, and then eventually losing those callings and everything else because they completed them all by the end. I think that was interesting, and I feel like they should have followed up with that, but this wasn't a follow-up to that. That was essentially just, let's let these characters live out the lives that they got taken from them, essentially, instead of letting us see what the other characters who weren't part of the flight, how they would react to the end of the world and then the end of the world stopping because of the passengers. They should have continued on with that world instead of just sort of resetting everything. I was kind of disappointed by that ending, but other than that, I did enjoy the series a lot. I think it was one of the best shows I've ever seen, because I am a fan of shows like that where there's this overarching mystery through the whole series until you get to the end and find out what exactly happened or who this person is or whatever, stuff like that. But I feel like the ending just that ending 10 minutes or whatever of the series sort of just took me out of it almost. And I think they could have done a better job of concluding the story. I know they were limited by what they had because they were originally going to have 3 more seasons out of this before NBC decided to cancel the series. And they got it picked up for one last season on Netflix, the 4th and final season. So they kind of had to condense the story from those 3 seasons they had originally planned and had written out and everything else and sort of squeezed it back together into 20 episodes for a fourth season. But I still feel like the ending could have been better. Like, yeah, like I said, it was satisfying to see these characters get their happy ending. But I think the more intriguing ending, or the more satisfying conclusion to the series, would have been for everything to carry on as if it did happen, and just let us see how the world is now that they saved it from the apocalypse, and like how the world views those passengers now, because in the series they started to become like outcasts almost. Like, people were shunning them because they were different or whatever. You know, they didn't look at them as people anymore, and they thought they were a threat. So they were locking up these passengers in prisons and stuff like that, and making them stay in these facilities that, like, essentially to keep them out of the outside world. So, like, I think it would have been interesting to see, well, now do they view them as that same, like, do they view them that same way as these outcasts, or do they look at them as heroes that saved them? Like, maybe we were wrong all this time. Like, all that character work sort of went out the window because now they get to live their lives that they were supposed to live anyways, that they were living originally before they boarded the plane. And that felt a bit anticlimactic, in my opinion. But if you were a fan of Manifest, let me know what you thought of the series finale down in the comments section. I had another video that I did on here a while back when they announced that they were canceling the series. I kind of gave my thoughts on just the whole series overall. So go check that out if you haven't seen it yet. Thank you for watching the video, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.